2,600 years ago, the prophet Ezekiel was shown a vision of a future temple that will bring peace and healing to the world. This temple is the subject of the last 9 chapters of the book of Ezekiel. In them, the prophet is taken through the temple by an angel who measures its walls and gates, its courtyards and chambers. It's like a blueprint from heaven. This is the Messianic Temple. After the temple is measured, the voice of God calls to Ezekiel and tells him to teach the design to the house of Israel. An oral tradition explains that when people study the design of this temple, God will consider it as if they already began to build it, because through learning its design, the light of the temple is brought into the world. So guess what happens next? No one learns the design, and the few who try find it incomprehensible. It seems that Ezekiel wrote the verses in such a cryptic manner that they were virtually impossible to understand. It's thought that he did this in order to keep idol worshippers from building their temples in the shape of the house of God. In the meantime, the entire subject of the Messianic Temple is neglected and even suppressed. Not a word of it is mentioned in the Talmud. As recent as 400 years ago, one of the leading scholars wrote that in his generation, there were not even 10 men who understood the Messianic Temple, or the Third Temple as it began to be called. I discovered this incredible and deplorable situation in 1994 and decided to write a book explaining Ezekiel's design in such a way that everyone could understand it. If learning the design was the key to building it, what were we waiting for? I wasn't working in a vacuum. Over the years, several important books had been written about the Third Temple. Each one of them had something to offer. I spent the next few years studying these books, collecting what I thought were the most pertinent points. One of these books suggested that we make drawings of the design to help us understand it. I decided to take it one step farther and build a scale model of the Third Temple. With a team of 4 craftsmen, we built a museum-quality model based on Ezekiel's verses. It took us nearly a year and a half of research and construction. In order to make Ezekiel's text better understood, I worked on a New English translation, then added a running commentary based on selections from those earlier books. Finally, I teamed up with an artist who makes 3D architectural drawings. We created more than 200 diagrams and pictures to explain every detail of the design. And here it is, the Messianic Temple, the first user-friendly version of Ezekiel's prophecy. A friend of mine asked, how could you hope to explain the design of the Third Temple when earlier generations failed to do so? They were giants. Compared to them, you're a dwarf. I told him that he was right, but when a dwarf sits on the shoulders of a giant, he can see even further than the giant. So if you want to see what the future will look like, it's right here in this book. By reading the Messianic Temple, you will not only see the future, you will make it happen. Just push the button.